Hey, yeah, what's up? This disciple Marcello Kearns reign back up in this anti-Illuminati all day, anti-telepathy all day, and anti-America all day, and everybody with them. Yeah, so this message is going to be about my experience with the black community, my personal experience with the black community. You know, even though I am of African descent, I'm 52% Nigerian. You know, the African American experience, whether you're African or not, is a whole different animal. So, so this is what white America doesn't know. You know, that there is hate among us, hate for each other among us that you haven't identified as necessarily racism. It's just a hate in different categories. It's hates in different categories. You got some dark skinned people that hate light skinned people. They just look at light skinned people and don't like them. You got light skinned people that don't like dark skinned people. They just look at dark skinned people and don't like them. You know what I'm saying? And this is something you would never understand because you think it's petty, but go to black families and ask black women that's light skinned how much they went through in high school. Ask them all the jealousy they went through from black people. Ask them. Go talk to these light skinned women. I'm talking about old school. I ain't talking about new school because now everybody's mixed up. You know what I'm saying? You don't know if people are black in Argentina. You don't know what they are. Okay, but ask these old school, because this shows you the history. This shows you how the foundation of the community of African Americans have been moving for decades and years. Go ask these light skinned women how they went through high school and what happened to them through high school. How dark skinned women just hated on them just because they were light skinned. Just because of that. That's a type of hate that white America don't know. You don't know this because as soon as you hear it, I'm gonna tell you the first thing you're gonna do as a human. You're gonna think this is petty, that is not as rooted in the black community as I'm saying. And it is. There's a lot of people that were basically tortured for being light skinned. There are people that were tortured for being beautiful as a black person. There are people that suffered through all of their years in high school, middle school, elementary because of their complexion, how they looked. This you don't realize how much it affects and has affected the African American community. Everyone has their own experience. So I say all that to say this: when you find someone that's standoffish, white America, you find someone that's standoffish, you find someone that's even that doesn't prefer their own people. Don't assume that they're racist like your counterparts, like they're racist like white America. They may be separate because of their experience with the black community, which is valid. We're all humans. And humans can make mistakes. Humans can make people repel them from their community. There's nobody that's just gonna embrace, there's nobody that's just gonna embrace the black community at all costs. If you have a bad experience, everybody doesn't have a bad experience, but those who do get labeled as bougie, they get labeled as racist, they get labeled as all these things, and white people don't understand the dynamics that made them that way. They don't understand the experiences that made them this way. So you look at them as a sellout, and the sellouts was the people that looked in their face and treated them with hate and disgust for no apparent reason. So more times than not, let me explain this before I get into it. More times than not, light-skinned African Americans suffer more than black American, dark-skinned Americans. And this is why, the obvious is they stick out. You're different from most African Americans. Your hair is different. Your eye color is different. Your lips are even different. The way you talk may be even different. Your energy and your vibration may be even different. So I would say that there is no contest comparing the struggle between light-skinned and dark-skinned African Americans. The light-skinned African Americans have suffered by far more than the dark-skinned African American among themselves. I'm talking about among themselves, not abroad in America with other races. I'm talking about among themselves, light-skinned African Americans have suffered. I'm talking about going way back, all the way back even to slavery times. They have suffered more just for being who they are, just for looking as they look. In slavery, the house Negro, I would suspect, was the one that was envied. And this is and this is how it all started. Because the house Negro had privileges, the house Negro looked different and was separate from the field Negroes. So who you think envies who? You think the house Negro is envying the field Negro? When they're out there in the field, when they live in the shacks? What reason would the light-skinned house Negro have a reason to hate the field Negro? There's no reason. What's the reasons for the field Negro to hate the house Negro? Privileges, first of all, living in the house, and the lifestyle that they lived. That's the main reason. That's the foundational reason. So throughout the American culture, unfortunately, white America has embraced light-skinned Negroes a little more. And dark-skinned Americans envied that. And it was not their fault. You know what I mean? That was not their fault. They didn't do anything that a lot of light-skinned black people don't do anything to get those privileges. You know what I'm saying? And it's probably an undertone of the white Americans feeling like that they're a part of them, that's their own in a subtle way. And that's another thing that's not the light-skinned African Americans' fault. These are issues that I have heard no preacher or heard nobody talk about. And if you sit up and act like this is non-existence, if African Americans act like this is non-existence, you are the most fraudulent community there is. Because this has been a very, very big issue. I'm gonna take you back to middle school. When I was in middle school, when I stayed in the ghetto, you know what I'm saying? I had long hair. Let me tell you my ethnicity. Like I told you, I'm 52% Nigerian. I am also Asian. I am also 4 different types of European. I did a DNA test and found out that like I said, Nigerian, Asian, 4 different types of European, North, South, East, West European, and South American. So with that blend, I suffered player haters in school. I didn't know I was Asian. I didn't know I was part Asian. I had Asian friends. I had Asian Crips that I used to hang out with. Jonathan, Kid, June, and Nook, Laos Crips, and I don't know, I just got along with everybody. And they befriended me. But this black guy, and when I was in middle school, he just hated me for no reason. Like there was no reason. I didn't say anything to make myself seem unlikable or anything. And he would actually just stand up on the school bus and just call me, because of my looks, call me a bitch boy, because I was real pretty in the face, I had permed hair, and he would make comments on my hair and sing perm songs like Just For Me. He would sing Just For Me, Just For Me, and he would sing this in front of everybody. And some people were laughing and some people wasn't. You know what I'm saying? At the same time, his sister liked me. And his sister commented on my perm and said, your perm look better than mine. So this individual also had his leg amputated. He got his karma for being the person that he was. But he was this dark-skinned, big, fat guy. Big, obese guy. And the only reason he didn't like me, because I was beautiful in the face. I had pretty eyes, long hair, and a complexion that was completely a contrast to his. Meanwhile, I got along with the football jocks in school. I got along with a set of twins that both were football players. So I wasn't a kind of guy that didn't get along with popular people or even black guys that were cool. These guys was the coolest of cools. And guess what complexion they was? Light skin, yellow bone, yellow, what we say in the African American community, yellow bone. I hung out with them, I came to their house, and they had respect from even this dark-skinned dude. Even this dark-skinned dude knew him that I was telling you about, and I chilled with them and had respect with them. What was the difference? They were more popular than the dark-skinned dude. They were football players. They were the best, some of the best football players. And I had their respect, and they befriended me, and they liked me. You know what I mean? So, and even other people around this person, this dark-skinned dude, they liked me too. So it wasn't like, it was like I didn't fit in with black people. It wasn't like that. It was the dark-skinned guy, darker than blacker than everybody. That's what he was. He was the darkest dude, one of the darkest dude in our neighborhoods. And nobody else had problems with me but him. And it was no reason but that I was beautiful. And this is part of my experience that I've experienced. You know what I mean? And I can't speak for other black people, because maybe you fed in and maybe you didn't have a look that made people think you were different from African Americans, but I did, and that's my experience. The envy that I've received from African Americans. I had a Jamaican friend, and here in Brooklyn. When I was living in Brooklyn, and he told me that people envied me because of my look. This is a Jamaican. Some would consider that more African than African Americans. And he was my friend, and he hung out with me. I've been accepted by true Africans. This dude was is like I said, a Jamaican. I met his mother, everything. You know what I mean? And he said himself concerning me that people hating on me because of my looks. I had an Italian man that I hung out with too in Brooklyn that told me, you know what, Marcello? At this time, I was, drinking and stuff. We was drinking some gin. We had a whole fifth of gin, and we was just drinking it. And he just came up. He just had this conversation. He was like, "You know what it is with you? It's envy. They envy you." He said some people are tall, too short. There's something's wrong with them. He said it's envy, and that tells me that somebody around me was envying me then, for him to even say that. Because why would he just say this out of nowhere? This was because he picked up, or there was some politics around that was against me, and it was envy. And he pinpointed it. This is from an Italian man right there, and the other a Jamaican man. Two different ethnicities that see that black people are jealous and envious of me. So this is what I went through. This is my experience. I don't know about your experience. This is mine. Now it gets worse. I had a black man in San Francisco while I was walking down the street. A random person that stopped me, and I walked by, and he said something too. He said something. He said, you ain't me. He said, look at your eyes. He said, go back to your home country. An African American man told me to go back to my own home country. He said, look at your eyes. You ain't me. Now, if he was crazy, why did he have Pacifics? He had Pacific reasons for saying that I wasn't African American, and he had Pacific reasons, and that led him to conclude that go back to your own home country. Now, what black people do you know on the average has a black man talk about Pacifics about you, which X's out him being crazy, talks about Pacifics about you, look at your eyes, you're not me, meaning you're not black, and tells me to go back to my own home country? What black people you know have been through that? In the church or outside the church, in prison or outside of prison, in the ghetto or in the suburbs? What black people you know had a person literally specifically tell them to go back to their own home country? That's the worst thing a black man could say when his descendants come from Africa, when his ancestors come from Africa. That's the worst thing a black person can say to anybody. And then he says it to somebody that's black. Oh, it gets worse. Then after that, I had a black man call my mom a nigger. A black man called my mom a nigger. After all I've been through, remember I told you all I've been through, dude telling me to go back to my own home country. That was before that. And a black person calls my mother a nigga? Now, people will say, oh, well, that's not everybody. When I'm a human being, if I go through all these experiences and then someone calls my mother a nigga that's black, and I've had a bad black experience, what do you think I'm going to do? I'm going to refrain from embracing. I'm not going to embrace the collective black community. I'm going to break it down to a black individual basis. I'm going to embrace African Americans on an individual basis, not on a collective community basis, because of what I've been through. Somebody call your mother a nigga that's a Pacific race, you're not going to pacifically like those type of people. Now, I'm not saying hate. You're not going to prefer them as an acquaintance when they called your mom a nigger. It's no way you can sugarcoat it. There's no way you can change the interpretation. My mother is a mature woman. He didn't know my mother. He didn't know her. So it wasn't like an acquaintance term, and it wasn't like a cool term because she's too mature. He said it as a term of hate, calling my mom a nigger. A black man of African descent from New York City that moved down to Florida. Yeah, one of your own. Can't say it was no Southern man. It was a New York City person from the Bronx that called my mom a nigger. And you're questioning my belief, you questioning my loyalty to black people? You questioning my interpretation of how you interpreted how I move? After somebody called my mom a nigger, you interpreting how I move? See, and guess what white America gonna do? Overlook that. Because they treat African Americans like they're little endangered species that they're gonna protect at all costs. I'm just keeping it 100. You are more going to defend them than care about my objective of them, my objection of them. You're going to be more in siding with them because you want to just be this loving, smiley, white American people that embrace black people instead of looking at the complaints. When has a white America looked at the complaints against black Americans? You haven't looked at them outside of white people. I'm not talking about white complaints. Have you looked at black complaints? Have you looked at even other ethnicity complaints about African Americans? You treat African Americans like an endangered species, and many of them, not all, act like an endangered species themselves. They act like an endangered species. And I'm not saying that they're an animal. They act like an endangered species. Nobody can't say nothing to you. Nobody can't do nothing to you. You're hurt all the time, and you're so sensitive, but nobody's looking at what they doing. That's treating them like they're some type of species you just got to preserve at all costs. You're not looking at any of their wrongs. Because what are you going to, and what the black community going to do, and what any American's going to do, they're going to side with black people, even with what I'm saying now. After they call my mom a nigger, and told me to go back to my own home country, you're going to side with them. That's two of the worst things an African American could say to anybody. Go back to your own home country and call somebody's mother a nigger, not somebody's brother, not somebody's uncle, not somebody's sister. Calling somebody's mother a nigger? That's facts. That's facts. And if I had did the same thing, America would be walking around me, playing games with me, putting black people around me to see how I act. That's what you'll be doing. If I did something like that, you'll consider me a Nazi. If I told a black person to go back to their own home country and I called their mother a nigger, you would consider me a Nazi. So what are they? Your endangered species that you're protecting at all costs. Yeah, I had to let the cat out the bag because I feel and I sense that you think that you think I'm racist and you don't know what I've been through. And you could say two wrongs don't make a right. You could say all what you want to say, but at the end of the day, I have the right, based on what I've been through, to stand on my own. Okay? So nobody's gonna be riding my coattail. This ain't gonna be no collective movement what I'm doing. I'm speaking the truths about America for my family because my family is African too. So when I speak these things about the African American experience, as far as America and the government and all of that, I'm talking for my family and for my freedom. Don't ever get it messed up like this. Everything like I'm finna start some movement with the people that called my mom a nigger and told me to go back to my own home country. I'm just letting you know, so you can get off your high horse, black man, for acting like you've done nothing wrong and you do nothing wrong. Okay, you have been racist to me. Like, yeah, getting you off your high horse of acting like you can't be racist. I'm showing you two examples. Calling my mom a nigger and telling me to go back to my own home country. Look at my eyes are not his. Like, no, he said, look at my eyes, you ain't me. That's racist. Telling my mom to go, calling my mom a nigger, that's racist. And this is why you have the divisions and the hate that you have, white America, that you don't know about. This is why people can't get along. This is why. So I just want people to know, for the record, what my experience is on my own as an individual. This has been my experience. But I speak for justice, but for the African American experience per se, but it's for my family and for myself foundationally.